class. So we're back talking about slope. Today we are going to be focusing on our I can statement of from tables specifically. You don't need to write down a new I can, so we're still working off of yesterday's. So let's look at these two tables. Pause the video, but I want you to think about, are these two tables the same? Yes and no, and why? So pause the video. Okay, so now that you pause these videos, you probably noticed that both tables, the up and down one, both have an X value on both of them. Both have X. And they both have Y values. All right, so far they're the same. All right, well, let's look down here. My first one is -2 for my X. Well, I come over to my X and it says -2. Well, -2's Y value is 5. -2's Y value is 5. Wait a second, so far they're exactly the same. Well, -1, 3, -1, 3, 0, 1, and 0, 1. So these are identical. What is the difference about these? The only difference is how they are set up. So we talked in class about how, how these are exactly the same, but for some reason, the computer program that we run our tests and quizzes from likes to have them laying down, like this one. However, we tend to build ours when we write them ourselves more like this up and down guy. But they are identical, okay? Also, remember from science class that you guys were talking about independent and dependent variables. Our independent variable is always our X number, our X value, and our dependent is always our Y value. So here is some more information. Tables are another way just to show data and to make it easier for us to understand the data. Sometimes the tables will be labeled with X and Y, but a lot of the time in real world problems, they're going to be labeled with other measurements, like you were dealing with in science class earlier this school year. Okay, so the tables, to find tables and how to do them, we just have to find 2 of the points that are on the table. So if you remember earlier, that last table had 3 points. We just have to choose 2 of those, okay? Now this is where things get a little bit different. We need to count up or down to find the change in our Y and in our change of our X. We have to make sure that we keep them separate, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Now, always write your slope as a fraction with Y on top of X. And remember, we always wanted to keep it as a fraction. Even if we have to say, well, all right, here's my number. My slope is M, and my number is 4. Well, 4 as a fraction is 4/1. Pause the video, get all of the red words in your notes, and then unpause it to go on. So here's our first table. So let's look at this. As a mathematician, I like to choose the numbers that are either the easiest ones for me to understand or the ones that have 0 in it. I'm looking at this table and none of them have 0 in it, but I'm going to pick the last 2 to talk about, the last 2 points to talk about. So I'm looking at -1, and I'm going to just draw a quick number line because I think that'll help us. All right, so here's my number line. So I'm looking at, I'm starting at -1, and I'm going to end at +1. So I'm just looking, right now, I'm just looking at my X values, the blue circled numbers, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, I'm starting at -1 and I'm taking some number of steps and I'm going to end up at +1. Well, how many steps did I take? Well, I took 2 steps. And I went to the right, so I went +2 steps. Okay? All right. Well, let's talk about the next ones. So I'm starting at 2, and I'm going to -2. So now I'm starting at 2, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Well, I went 4 steps, but I went to the left, so I went -4. So let's talk about setting up our slope. M equals, and we know we're going to have a fraction, so I'm going to write a fraction line. I need to start with my y value. My y value on my table is in that right column, and I'm looking at the change in my y, and that's what we found as a -4. So -4 is going to go on top of my fraction. That means my other number, the +2, goes on the bottom of my fraction. Now, I type it into my calculator, boop, 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 and I see if I can simplify it. Well, it simplifies down to -2. But wait a second, didn't I just say what? What did I just say? It said I have to write these as a fraction. So when I write my slope down finalized over in the slope column, I have to write it as -2/1. In Canvas, you're going to write it just like I did over here in the slope section, -2, this dash, and then 1. But in our notes, you'll see me most often write it like I did here with the -2/1. Now let's talk about the description of this line. The line's not drawn, but I can talk about this line. I know that it has a negative slope, so I'm going to write negative here. I also know that if it's negative, it's also decreasing. So that's one of those things that we don't have to have a picture, we can actually determine that. All right, I'm going to pause the video, make sure you have all of this down. All right, in class we did example 2, but I'm going to skip down to number 3 so we can talk about if a table has flipped the other direction. So I'm going to choose the points that are easiest for me, okay? And for me, I'm going to pick those 2 points, 0, 6/5 and 1, 8/5. So I'm talking about my x first. So I'm going to be comparing how many steps did I go from 0 to 1? Well, I just went +1. Okay, that's easy. Ooh, but the next one's kind of icky. So I can go back and I can either go back and make a number line and the number line going up by fifths. That works. So we could talk about, I start at 6/5 and I'm going to 8/5. How many fifths did I go up? Well, from 6 to 8, I went up 2 fifths. That works. But there is an easier way. If I take the second number, and that is 8/5, and I subtract the first number, I will get that answer of 2/5. And it's a positive 2/5 because I go from 6/5 to 8/5. So now I set up my fraction. M equals, and then I think about this for a second. I need my y value. My y value is this down here because we were talking about our y's. So that goes on top. So 2/5 on top divided by 1. I'm going to simplify that out, and it comes out to 2/5. And that is as simplified as that gets. So my slope is 2/5. And I see that the slope is positive, so it's positive and increasing. All right, guys, I hope this helps. Bye.